there we have it. The first set of games of the Premier League season are done because we're now into the international break, which always just seems to me so soon, doesn't it? You just get back into the season and Premier League football's back and you'll get excited. And before you know it, there's a breather for international friendlies and whatnot, which can be a bit frustrating. But to be honest, it's hard to be frustrated, isn't it, for West Ham? Because, and other teams as well, but certainly for us, because we started the season so well. It's just nice to look at that table, isn't it? We rarely start seasons well, West Ham. It's one of our things that always seems to be an issue that we always have. I wouldn't necessarily say blame the club. It always feels like the fixture list is always very cruel on us, isn't it? We always seem to have these tough first couple of games and we always seem to be lagging behind and have to play catch up. So to be sitting at fourth place, after 4 matches played, unbeaten, I think we're plus 6 goals, if I think rightly, maybe. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I'm really, really pleased. It's just a lovely, lovely way to be kicking off our season and gives you a bit of optimism, doesn't it? Like, I mean, starting to look up and a bit excited about what we can achieve. I mean, we have got some tough games coming up, of course. Got Man City next, followed by Liverpool away. So very hard, and that's going to be very testing. But yeah, let's enjoy this. Let's enjoy it while it lasts because it's been brilliant. And one of the key factors of this season, not only has it been the recruitment. Let's make no mistake. This has been very well handled by the club overall in terms of the players that have been brought in. For the players that have departed, we lost Declan Rice, lost Skamaka. Big players have left the football club. And for West Ham to then go out and invest well and get the players in and have settled just so quickly. I mean, they really have. I mean, not only James Ward-Prowse you'd expect to settle, but Edson Alvarez looks the part. Looks like he's been playing for us for a long time. So really great to see. I'm chuffed and generally very excited. But one big key factor as well, aside from all the recruitment, etc., has been the captaincy. It's been a question, isn't it? That's been hanging around for quite a while. Who's going to be the captain? Earlier on, I think during the summer, it was sort of touted as being Creswell was likely to take the armband. Gerd was mentioned; it might well be. Thomas Souček was looking like a leading candidate. There was a lot of people that were, likely to take the armband. In fact, my feeling was that it was going to be a new player. I was expecting James Ward-Prowse to be handed the captaincy full time. Now, it appears that it's going to be Kurt Zouma that's going to be West Ham's captain full time because, well, he's been captain this season, hasn't he? We started off with him. And how can you blame the club for wanting to stick with him now, like the way we started? We're going to get back to the video really shortly, but I just want to let you know this video is actually sponsored by NordVPN. Now, NordVPN are a private network that allow you as a fan to watch games from the comfort of your own home. You can change the region that you're in. It also allows you to watch films, TV shows, things like that. Now, the other big thing is it's also on travel costs. So being West Ham, where you're in Europe again, and also you might want to go on holiday, but you can also save some money on your flights, on your hotels, things like that. It's really worth it. And look, for the monthly subscription, okay, it's less than a pint or a coffee a month. Now, if you go to the link below and using nordvpn.com/West Ham Way, you get 4 months free, completely free. And also after that, you get a 30-day money back guarantee. So just click on the link, go on it, give it a try, see what you think. Anyway, back to the video. I mean, let's just talk about Kurt Zouma for a minute. We'll talk about every issue with Zouma. Well, every issue, but every aspect of Kurt Zouma in this video as much as we can. But let's just start about the actual player himself. I mean, he genuinely is one of West Ham's most important players. He is an exceptionally talented defender. We look so much better when he's available. When he's playing, we are just so much a better side. We look for our more balance. And I'm talking not just this season. I'm talking since he's been at the football club. Always found that he's a sort of commanding and reassuring presence within the team. Just so reliable. And then and it's strange, isn't it, when you look at Zouma, because not only do we know of the fact that he's got these terrible injury record as well, he always seems to pick up a nasty injury, which is I'm going to come to again in a second, but it's the fact that when you watch him play, he always looks so uncomfortable and you're always worried he's going to struggle, but then he just produces these performances. I mean, Luton Town, the last game, he was exceptional. He got my man of the match. He was that good. Just such a talented player. And for me, last season, although Declan Rice took it, I think Zouma would have been up there, to take the hammer of the year for me. He's just an excellent player all round and such a brilliant signing for West Ham, and still only 28 years old. I mean, he's still well within the prime of his career. We have really got a fantastic defender there. And there you go. I mean, he joined in 2021. He joined Kurt Zouma, so 2 years ago. He's played 54 games for West Ham in his time. as I've said, a lot of his time is blighted by injury. He's going to have that, unfortunately, because of his knees. He always seems to pick up these injuries. And I always in my mind think you're going to lose him for probably roughly around about a third of the season. He probably will be without Zouma. And that's, quite a worry, really, because you consider how good he is. But it is just part and parcel of the Zouma. What I do like about him, though, he's one of those players. He reminds me a little bit like Julian Dix used to be for West Ham, Ledley King for Tottenham, that could go away from the club, be away because they're from injury, and then just slot straight back into the side as if they'd never been away. Like he'd be off for a month, Zouma. We'd think, oh my God. And all of a sudden he's available, starting, and he's and he puts in like a man of the match performance. He's just such an excellent player to have around. Obviously, the controversy with Zouma, the elephant in the room, is obviously the cat situation, which occurred in February 22. It was the whole situation with the cat. It came out. It was leaked by the Sun, etc. There was videos of Kurt obviously abusing a pet cat and all this kind of thing with his brother. A real horrible situation. Put the club in a really awkward position, and it was just generally, wasn't it, a real horrible thing. And at the time, we just didn't need it. It was a terrible distraction because we were in the Europa League. It was all these things going on. We did not need it whatsoever. But the club stood by Zouma, straight away, did nothing. Even when the investigation was going on, if you remember, I think when the video came out, he played that night. He played, and I think it was against Watford, if I remember rightly, and actually played all right. So the club have always stood by him. And I actually think the club have handled the situation really well, very, very well. They said, well, look, there's an investigation going on. We'll be doing our own investigation at the side of it. But until then, we're just going to carry on playing the player. He was obviously then subsequently found guilty. I think it was RSPCA of animal abuse rights, all these things. I think he was, in terms of the law, he was asked to do community service. I think it was 180 hours. He's now carried those out, or he's doing them, whatever. Paid a fine. And then West Ham then did their own investigation and fined him the maximum they possibly could, which I think was 2 weeks' wages, which I think for the Zoomers around about £250,000. Took a lot of money. And on top of that, the club said they're going to take him for courses and to get him to become a better person for it. And ultimately, that's what you can do, isn't it? Like, people deserve forgiveness of things. And let's be honest, my word, in terms of the football world, people have done far worse than what Kurt Zouma did and have faced far less media attention and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a shame. It's a horrible situation. I'm not no way condoning anything he's done, but it's one of those, isn't it, that you feel like it's okay. He's served his punishment. He's been punished by the club. It's kind of time to move on. You think, as long as he's learned from this situation, it's not nice, but there's obviously going to be some people that are never going to forgive him. That's fine. That's going to happen. But ultimately, life needs to move on. And I actually think the club have handled the situation really well. Of course, the big question is regarding that. Is that enough to not give him the captaincy? Because, of course, that is the first thing that comes to your mind. It's just naturally it is. When you think, is Kurt Zouma going to be named West Ham's permanent captain? You go, oh, but what about the backlash? Well, look, it's quite clear and obvious. The club don't really care because, or David Moyes, whatever. David Moyes, I can only assume, has picked that Kurt Zouma. It's got to be, isn't it? It's got to be a David Moyes selection. I can't imagine it come from anybody else. And it's a big accolade, isn't it, for a player, considering the fact what Zouma's put him through, because this would have been a very stressful situation for not only the club, but David Moyes himself. He must have been under immense pressure to drop Zouma, I'm sure. Not necessarily from West Ham, but just from outside quarters. But he stood his ground, stood by the player. I'm no doubt, can you imagine the conversations behind the scenes when this was unfolding? No doubt David Moyes is furious and said, this is not what we need, a distraction. But fair play, it shows a lot about the character of not only David Moyes, but the player himself, of how they've then moved on from this and to such an extent that Kurt Zouma is now West Ham's captain. Because, make no mistake, as I've said, if the club had a problem, if the club were anxious about announcing Zouma as captain or making him a permanent captain, he wouldn't have been captain to start the season. No way. Like, they just wouldn't have done it. Because they clearly are standing by him. They are. The only other issue I've got with Zouma being captain And that, don't get me wrong, that's not an issue for me. I'm past what the situation was with the animal welfare situation and all that with the cat. I'm past it because I just think, like I've said, he's served his time. It wasn't pleasant. He's come out and apologised. He's paid his fines. The club have dealt with it internally. The law have dealt with it. You kind of, what more can you do? You can't drag. Life has to go on. So I can't, sit here and keep saying it's a big problem for me. It's just one of those things, isn't it? You got to, if it is a problem for certain people, fine. That's not, that's up to you. But for me personally, it's not really something I'm dwelling on. The only other issue I would say, though, when you consider Kurt Zouma, is the injury record. Like I've said, he's a player that realistically is probably going to miss to 25 to 30% of the season through injury. That is the player, like I've just said about the likes of Ledley King, Dixon, all these players. They're just those players that are very good. They just tend to have injuries, and they're always going to have struggle with injury and miss games occasionally. And that's the only drawback you'd have. My feeling is with this then, if Kurt Zouma is the new permanent captain, which it appears that he is, and I'll come to that in a minute with what XWHE employees said on it, is that you'd need another vice captain that's going to be playing all the time. Effectively, you need two, I think, because of Zuma's injury record. So that's my only thing that's quite important. When West Ham do announce the captaincy, which I believe is going to be soon, whether they're officially announced, I'm not sure, because the club have gone into a strange way of dealing with news of the club and internal situations, but just not really announcing things. I mean, they've not even announced the coaches. I mean, Mark Robson's now a first-team coach at the club. He's taken over. He's been promoted, and the club haven't even mentioned it. And they do it for quite a lot of things, like player contracts. Creswell signed a new deal last November. Didn't make any noise about that. They haven't really made any big noises about anything. So they do tend to keep things quite quiet. So whether the club will actually officially announce Zouma as captain, I don't know. Possibly not, because there will be no doubt some sort of media backlash on it. I'm guessing, because that's just the way the world, isn't it? But so yeah, that my feeling is, because of his injury record, you would have to make sure that the vice captain is someone that's going to be available and a good leader. But I've got to say, in terms of the player, his injury and the situation with the animal welfare, he has absolutely handled this amazingly well. And you consider the fact that he still gets stick now. I mean, you only had to watch the Luton game and the amount of booing that was coming his way, and there's clips of fans shouting at him while he was warming up and all this stuff, and he just gets on with it. It absolutely doesn't bother him, does it? The slightest. He just puts in a great performance. I mean, I like the fact he gave it back to the fans, and that's a bit of the old pantomime side of football, isn't it? But it was... Yeah, I'm impressed with it, really, because there's a lot of players would struggle, right? I mean, I certainly would. I mean, if I was under that much cost from everybody and getting booed from everybody and feeling that much pressure, but he just doesn't seem to faze him, and that's, I'm sure, one of the key factors as to why David Moyes is a big admirer and why he sees him as a leader on his leader on the pitch. And let's be honest, he's taken the armband from a Declan Rice, who, make no mistake, is one of the was an excellent captain for West Ham, and will no doubt go on to probably captain England, a huge player in the game, and will be for the next, probably 10 years. So for someone like Kurt Zouma, who's been through all of this, and he's got that injury record, and yet he still gets that captaincy, is a real testament to the man, actually. I think, in terms of his character and how he's dealt with the whole situation, because he's dealt with it very well. I think he can't be ignored. I know some people are going to watch this and go, "How dare you stand by him?" And he did this for Cat. I'm not condoning anything like that. I'm just saying it's time to move on. But I'm just saying it's quite a big part. It's a big testament to his character, the fact that he's managed to draw a line under that and move on and perform so well. And and the fact that you've got a manager like David Moyes, as I've said, who no doubt would have been fuming at the time when this all came out last year, stand by him, not only stand by him, but then make him captain is quite a big thing. And also on top of this, I wanted to talk about his form this season, Kurt Zouma. I mean, he started the season so well. As I've said, last season he could have been Hammer of the Year. He was one of our best players. He's such a consistently good performer. Probably the only thing that stops him getting those awards is the situation we talked about, and possibly the fact he's injured a lot. He misses quite a fair bit of the season. And I think, and he's a little bit of an unsung hero in a sense, isn't he, Kurt? Because he just gets on with it. I know he scored a goal against Luton, which probably put him into the spotlight a little bit more. But most of the time he doesn't. People don't recognise how well he's actually playing. He has just been so good for us. It's an interesting one. I mean, as I've said, XWH employee has provided a bit of an update on this. There's going to be a podcast out I believe tomorrow, which we'll cover lots of things. Now, whether it's going to, I think we'll talk about the captaincy a little bit in that, and where we are with it. But one thing he has said is that now it's highly, highly unlikely it's going to be anyone else other than Zouma, because not only has he been made captain, but the fact not only have we made captain, but we're performing so well. West Ham have started the season so well. So, yeah, it might be controversial. No doubt it will be controversial to some, not to many as well. I'm not, it's not for me really, but you know, the way it's standing at the moment, Kurt Zouma will be West Ham's captain.